Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Be careful what you ask for, you might just get it." Okay, so this happened back in the 90s. Background is I was a maintenance worker for a local community. Now there are about 30 in our group of workers assigned to different departments. I've been bounced around from one to another for various reasons. So I tend to have a smart mouth at times and my replies tend to upset the bosses. So for whatever reasons on this particle day I somehow someway upset the superintendent, so my boss's boss. He had a long time hard on for me, didn't much care for my attitude, but I always showed up on time and always took any overtime offered, so despite being a smartass I was a very capable, skilled worker. Now on with the rest of the story. This is really back before cell phones were widely carried. I was pulled from my assignment and told to meet with the super for a new job. Well, we have a community bridge where I worked and the kids used to spray paint graffiti on it constantly. So I was told to paint the bridge. I was dropped off with paint, brushes, rollers and nothing else, so no radio to call for anything. This was in the early part of the day. I wasn't told to bring my lunch or anything to drink. So off I go to paint over the graffiti. I've been painting for a few hours by brush since I figured it was a punishment for something. I might as well take my time doing it. The weather was perfect. Now 1.5 hours after what should have been my lunchtime, the super drives up, gets out with another boss and comes to inspect what I've been painting all day. He starts screaming at me, "What the duck have I been doing all day?" I told him I've been painting like I was instructed to. He calls me a liar and said I've done nothing but duck off all day. Well, now that's not at all true, as I did in fact paint the bridge. However, I painted the back side of the bridge that faced out into a field and not the side that people can view when crossing the bridge. He was so upset at me while I looked at the other boss, who was laughing because he knew that I had a habit of doing what I'm told, just not the way that they expected it to be done. My response to the super: "Well, if you wanted me to paint the inside of the bridge you should have directed me to do so. You said paint over the graffiti, which I did. You however gave me poor directions and now you're mad about it. P.S. I had to spend the rest of the week painting the entire bridge. I hoped you got a chuckle out of it. I have a few more to write when I get a few minutes." The next one is titled, "You Want Us to Bleach the Rocks?" Alrighty then. So, like many people in the military, I too have had leadership, entering stupid contests and winning stupid prizes. This time was one of my favorites. Our top, first sergeant, highest ranked non-commissioned officer in an army company, basically a very senior management type, told all the young'uns to clean the area around HQ, including washing the whitewashed rocks that were surrounding all the pretty landscaping, which was something we had to do about once or twice a month or so. So we're out there with buckets of soapy water, washing the stupid rocks, when he comes out to inspect and declares that the washed rocks still look dingy and we need to bleach them to get them white again. Then he proceeds to check out and go home for the weekend, leaving us to execute his orders without much in the way of supervision. Our sole junior sergeant who was left in charge wasn't the brightest bulb in the box, if you catch my meaning. Now, anyone who knows anything knows bleach ain't gonna do a thing to make a rock change color. What he meant for us to, and indeed what we should have done, was to repaint the rocks white again. And as it turned out, we didn't have paint, but we did have a couple bottles of Clorox. A couple of soldiers made a token protest, but our genius Jr. Sergeant tells them, "Top told us to bleach the rocks, and we're gonna bleach them." So we spend the rest of our day bleaching the rocks. Top comes back on Monday to a bunch of still grey and dingy looking rocks, and lots of dead landscaping. Turns out, bleach is bad for plants. He was livid, but he had a hard time finding someone to get in trouble for it, since we'd all done exactly what we'd been told to do. The best thing, though, was that for the rest of my time in that unit, no one ever told us to wash the rocks again. The next one is titled, "Following Doctor's Orders." This happened 25 or 26 years ago. I was a teen in high school and my mum was this raging alcoholic. In addition to the alcoholism, she was abusing Prozac and Xanax. Good times. One night she woke me up in the middle of the night. She was a bloody mess. She decided to repot some houseplants and tripped going down the porch steps, face planting on a ceramic pot. She wanted to go to the ER to have her face stitched up and needed a driver. I got up and took her. Once the doctor came in, she decided she didn't like him and refused treatment. Obviously, they knew her and her issues. It wasn't life or death, so they gave me some bandages and instructions on how to clean her up. Ultimately, she just needed to sleep it off and she'd be fine. I was upset, middle of the night bullshit from her, I had to go to school the next day, etc. So, when we got home I sat her down in the bathroom and started cleaning her face with a wet cloth. When it came time to take care of the deep cut, I grabbed the rubbing alcohol and poured it directly on the wound to clean it out. I'm sure she was too wasted to fully feel it, but it made me feel better. Even now, after all of these years, I don't regret it and I still laugh about it with my brothers. The next one is titled, "Want to bill me for chopping down my trees? I have a solution." This is my absolute favorite story about my late grandfather. I was young at the time this happened but have talked to a few people in adulthood to get a few details I didn't know before. My grandfather lived on the main street in a small farming town of a few thousand. The town was laid out in the classic grid pattern off the main highway. On his property, he had 3 large pine trees 40 to 50 feet high in a line fairly close to the sidewalk, and over the years the roots had started to lift up and crack some of the sidewalk. Understandably, the town wasn't pleased and wanted the trees removed so further damage wasn't incurred. Instead of coming to my grandfather to find a solution, they sent over an invoice for tree removal from property that amounted to more than his yearly property tax. Instead of paying, he chose malicious compliance. He took out his chainsaw and felled all 3 trees right across the main street. Without warning. On a Friday long weekend. When the town responded with a few workers, my grandfather bluntly argued the trees weren't on his property, therefore, couldn't be charged for their removal. They looked at the invoice the town sent and rather than argue with the most stubborn man in town, they decided to just cut up and haul off the trees themselves. It took all afternoon and traffic was detoured around the block. They patched the sidewalk and the stumps are still there to this day. The town got the trees removed and my grandfather didn't pay a cent. Win-win. The next one is titled, "Drive a +30-ton truck full of lumber over quicksand?" Sure, sign this first. This story is from a buddy of mine who works as a deliveryman for large loads of construction supplies. He's a truck driver, TD, and he works for Do What the Customer Says Inc. DWTCS Inc., which distributes contractor supplies. He drives the trucks that deliver different loads of materials. About a month ago, he was on a job for Strict General Contractor to deliver lumber for a housing development being built on marshy land. At the point of his delivery, Strict General Contractor had not drained a lot of the area for some reason except for a few large, deep isolated puddles. This wood TD delivered was being used to frame up some sidewalks and foundations for some other things. The access road was just packed soil with gravel on top of it. The previous day to TD's delivery, it had rained a lot. When TD pulled the 18-wheeler with a nearly full trailer of lumber, that's about 30 tons just for the wood, to the entrance of the access road, he noticed it had fallen into mud sludge with rocks in it. To test the sludge for driving, TD took a paint stick and stuck it into the mess that was the access road. The stick sank on its own. The housing development was a good 1/2 mile into the marsh, so he called up Strict General Contractor. Strict General Contractor, hello? TD, yes, Strict General Contractor, this is TD from DWTCS Inc. and your access road is too wet and dilapidated for me to deliver the lumber in. Your guys have to come out and get it in either separate trailers or by hand. Strict General Contractor, I can't do that, we're on a tight schedule. It'd take hours to unload it and take it to the site. TD, I can't do that, I'd get fired, wreck the truck and cargo and probably a ticket for reckless driving. Strict General Contractor, I'm filing a complaint about this. Strict General Contractor hangs the phone up. TD is left waiting there for a solid 1.5 hours and other supply trucks and contractors back up on the road. He gets another call from Strict General Contractor. Strict General Contractor, screeching, where's the lumber I expected over an hour ago? TD, I told you, the road is too dangerous for me to drive over. Strict general contractor, just get the goddamn lumber here. Strict general contractor once again hangs up. TD calls his supervisor, Big H, hello? TD? TD, yeah, it's me. The service road for Project X is dilapidated, and if I crossed it, it would bury me and the truck in. Strict general contractor insists I drive over it. Big H, I'll drive over there. Big H was the supervisor for the multiple drivers for the development, so he worked nearby. It took 30 minutes for him to get there, with 2 more angry phone calls from strict general contractor and the line of contractors getting longer. Big H gets to the scene. Strict general contractor is called out to meet with Big H, supervisor of the drivers servicing this area for DWTCS Inc. I hear we have a problem with the service road? Strict general contractor, there is no problem with the goddamn road. Your driver just refuses to go across anything other than perfected asphalt. Be aware, the service road had dried a little, so it looked a bit better than in the morning, but still dangerous driving territory. The packed soil had fallen apart, so it was just semi-wet dirt piles and gravel drying in the 10:30 a.m. Sunday. Big H, the road seems fine to me, let's test it. Big H borrows concrete boots from another contractor waiting in line and walks onto the ground. Surely enough, he starts sinking. Big H, yeah, we can't drive over this. The truck would sink real bad in this stuff, it's quicksand without the sand. Strict general contractor, don't ducking care, I need this lumber now. Strict general contractor storms off, leaving all the viewing contractors, including Big H and TD, dumbfounded. The trucks are Dutses's property, however, the trailers and their cargo are often rented or borrowed in the name of the contractor that subcontracts us. The trucks are owned by DWTCS and they can detach cargo from in the cab. Per company policy, in an emergency, discard cargo and prioritize the safety of yourself and the truck. Strict general contractor contacted Big H's supervisor. He was told to tell TD to just drive across it. Big H told his supervisor he'll only accept if strict general contractor signs a liability contract. He handwrites a contract in his truck saying any and all damage will be the liability of strict general contractor and must be paid to DWTCS. Strict general contractor comes back and signs the contract with a smug grin on his face. TD jumps in his truck and gathers everything important while Big H takes pictures near an oblivious strict general contractor. TD drives the truck into the road, makes it so that the trailer is 3 feet away from the edge of the road before the truck starts sinking past the point of no return. TD detaches the cargo, and tried to get the truck to escape, but is unable to. Remember, multiple-ton truck, this CRA is heavy. The truck is already about 1/5 the way submerged when TD releases the trailer. As the mud surrounds to about 1/3 of the way up the trailer. The engine is sputtering as it overtakes the truck and gives up. TD panics and abandons ship. He shoves the door. Nothing, the mud is too deep. The window makes it 2/3 the way before the battery gives way to a rising mud flood. TD has his G.I. Joe instincts kick in and smashes the rest of the window out and claws his way out of the truck. There, a mildly concerned Big H and livid strict general contractor stare at TD as he makes his way across the top of the sinking lumber, where it stops sinking about halfway into the quicksandy mud. Big H turns to strict general contractor and says the most triumphant words ever. Big H, lumber delivered. Since you signed the liability contract, I'll send you the invoice for everything. $80,000 went to the company plus taxes and fees and the price of the actual lumber delivery. Strict general contractor tried to argue against it in court but failed miserably. Don't make holes in your sinking ship, kids, jump out of it. The next one is titled, Write Me Up for Not Guarding the Spill? I'll never leave a spill unattended again. I used to work at Walmart and the store I worked in had a rule that if you see a spill, you are to guard the area to keep customers from slipping and falling. You were not to leave the spill for any reason while you flagged down another employee so that they could fetch cleaning supplies. Only managers and the cleaning crew had radios. I understand the logic here, as a lawsuit would certainly cost much more than an hourly employee's time standing next to a spill until it was cleaned up. However, there are a few issues with this in practice. I worked the evening shift in the meat department and most days I was the only person in my department. I was situated between frozen foods and produce, which more often than not only had one-person shifts as well, but they also closed much earlier than my department. This meant that I was the only person in my corner of the store for about half of my shift. If I came across a spill, there was no telling how long I would have to wait around for another employee to come by because there was literally nobody else working in or around my area. Also, being in the meat department, we had multiple cleaning stations all around. One was always a few steps away. One day, while working alone, I noticed a small spill. So I stood next to it per procedure for about 10 minutes. In this time nobody, customer nor coworker, had even entered my view. I couldn't help but think how dumb this was as I could see a cleaning station just on the other side of a bunker. I decided to throw in the flag and just go get the cleaning supplies and take care of it myself because even if a customer did come around I could still see the spill and easily call out to them to watch their step. Unsurprisingly, I was able to make the round trip without any incidents. As I was cleaning it, a manager came walking up and took notice of me. "Manager, what happened here?" "Me, just a spill. I've got it all sorted." "Manager, did you just happen to have cleaning supplies on you?" "Me, no, but they were just right there. I was able to fetch them without losing sight of the spill." "Manager, that's not how we do things. Someone could have gotten hurt." "Me, no, as I could have called to anyone that came near it. I was never more than a few steps away." "Manager, doesn't matter. You should have stood next to the spill and waited for someone else to come by." This went on for a few minutes, but the manager was not budging, so I conceded. That was not good enough for him, as he then proceeded to write me up for negligence and unsafe work practices. I was livid, but I was also a college student and needed the job, so I just kept quiet and returned to my shift. A week or two later, as I was once again the only person working in my corner of the store, I happened upon another spill. This time I shrugged and decided to guard it as if my job depended on it. I checked my watch and noticed that I had about 3 hours left on my shift and had a small laugh at the thought that I might be standing in that spot guarding a puddle instead of closing my department. 10 minutes passed. 30 minutes passed. 1 hour passed. Around this time I was bored out of my mind, but then I heard a call over the intercom system that made it so much more worth it. "We need an associate from the meat department to the back for a truck." This was followed by a few other calls for other departments for their trucks arriving as well. I started laughing out loud at this because I knew that this meant that the very few people that were likely to come by my department were now at the loading dock unloading trucks while I stood guard over my puddle. A few minutes passed before I heard the second call: "We need an associate from the meat department to the back for a truck." I just stood there counting the lights on the ceiling. 1 hour left of my shift and there still had not been a single fellow employee walk by. I assumed everyone was starting to finish up their own trucks by this point and would likely soon have to start unloading my truck as well. I was watching the minutes go by in anticipation, trying to decide if someone would come find me before my shift ended or not. I got my answer 15 minutes before the end of my shift as the very same manager from before came storming through the meat department furious. We made eye contact and he stormed over to me and started yelling about how they have been calling for me to unload the truck and how they are now behind schedule and so on. Once he took a breath long enough for me to speak, I asked simply, "Can you go to a spill station and grab something to clean this up? I've been here a while now." He glanced down at the puddle next to me and I thought he was going to explode. "Manager, you mean to tell me that you didn't unload the truck because you were watching a spill?" "Me, yes." "Manager, why didn't you just clean it up?" "Me, but leaving the spill would be unsafe for any customers. Besides, you wrote me up for doing that very thing recently, right?" The manager tossed his hands up in defeat and walked the 15 steps away to the nearest spill station and returned with supplies that he promptly gave me to clean the spill myself. "Manager, once you are done, go back to the loading dock and start on your truck." Me, "Sorry, I have only about 10 minutes left on my shift and as I've been standing here guarding the spill I never got my second break. So I'm going to the break room for a bit before clocking out." You'll need to find someone to close down my department as well." The manager just stomped off in a rage. I cleaned up the spill, played on my phone in the break room for a bit, and clocked out with a smile on my face. I know that the manager just made someone else do all the work and wasn't personally affected by this, but knowing that I could be a thorn in his side was enough for me. The next one is titled, "Deny Me Coffee? I'll have a super extra bagel, thanks." The company I work for is going on a bit of a hiring spree, and that means lots of interviews. Because many of those applying still have jobs, we sometimes do interviews very early or very late in the day. This was one of these days. When this happens, the company provides breakfast from the local coffee shop for those coming in early to interview. This is a nice little perk, and today is the first opportunity I've had to take advantage of it. Being the sort of person I am, I made a fairly minimal order of a cheese pastry and a latte. I wasn't particularly interested in wasting the company's money on a nice breakfast. Shortly after I emailed my order, I was returned an email that said they were only providing food, not drinks, for breakfast, citing price savings and the fact that the office has a coffee machine. This was a bit irritating as I had made an order that was below the average cost of a breakfast item at the shop. So I replied, asking, in that case, to change my order. I found, by far, the most expensive item on their breakfast menu, but I did absolutely make sure there was no doubt this item was in the breakfast section. It is, after all, a bagel. With cream cheese. And a scrambled egg. And a fried egg. And 4 different types of cheese. And ham, sausage, steak, and bacon. And avocado, spinach, and tomato, but a bagel nonetheless. My order was accepted. It was inedible. Well, inedible as a bagel. I poured it all out onto a plate and ate it with a knife and fork. Half for breakfast and half for lunch. Oh, and it cost 4 times what my original order cost, which was rejected because I wanted a damn cup of coffee. The last one is titled, "Tell Me How to Live My Life on My Property? No thanks." My mum has always been incredibly hard-headed. When I was a teen, once a year she always had us pull everything out of the garage. She had lots of boxes and a concerning amount of possession, so we could go through it, clean and reorganize. This particular year, the couple who owned the house across from us, Flippers, were in the process of selling their house. Unhappy with my mother's unsightly driveway covered in boxes soiling their good image, they made a call to the Homeowners Association. By the time my mother received the letter, the mess had been put away, but they decided to get her on a few other complaints such as the bikes against the side of the house and the patchy gravel. She had 2 weeks to have everything up to standards. Petty and easily frustrated, my mother knew immediately who called since the couple had come over and told her flat out with their renovations, they were selling that house for way more any other house in this neighborhood and would appreciate it if she respected that by keeping her property on par. For the next 2 weeks, every box from that garage was in our driveway. The couch and the living room TV came next. This was early summer, so it was perfect weather to sit in your yard in your short shorts and a sports bra. My mum made sure to wave and smile every time they brought someone over for a showing. The final step came at the end of that 2 weeks though. After the yard had been cleaned up and cleared by the Homeowners Association, my mum went to the local Walmart and bought a for sale sign. She wrote about 1/4 of their ridiculous asking price on it and finished off with a big sold written across the front and stuck it out in our yard. No clue what they ended up selling their house for, but it sat empty for a while, so I'd assume it was below offer. Thanks for listening.